She's a nurse practitioner at Kokua Kalihi Valley Comprehensive Family Services and also a past Obama Foundation scholar. We have Regina Rivera, nurse aide training instructor at KCC and also in her own teaching company on-site nurse aide training. And then we have Sara Thompson, a geriatric workforce enhancement program social worker instructor with the UH School of Medicine. And I will round out the panel as the facilitator. I'm a program evaluator with work experience in 2 federal workforce development grants at KCC and McKinley Community School for Adults as an ESL teacher. And my research focus on health communication is in home care for older adults in Hawaii. I'll give a brief introduction to contextualize Hawaii's current situation, and Sara will lead us in sustaining the current workforce through succession planning. Regina will present on recruiting and sustaining with addressing preconceived ideas and reframing higher skills. And Poki'i will discuss additional workplace innovations. I will wrap up the panel with a call to members like you to participate in career technical education opportunities to develop our workforce with older adults. We'll end with a time for questions and discussion. As probably all of you know, Hawaii has a population living longer than the national average and is in a health crisis as predicted in the 2009 documentary, The Grain of Hawaii. This population shift has been straining the already existing workforce shortage, but also has been creating opportunities for innovation to meet this challenge. For example, HPGS membership has reported turning away potential clients and difficulty in recruiting new workers. My own research with older adults, care workers, and employers confirm a high turnover. At the same time, there are emerging innovations such as HAH's glide paths, but I ask, is this enough to meet the reported increase of unfilled positions within their own membership? I would like to suggest we need multiple approaches to a complex problem. HPGS's membership and all employers working with older adults need to champion innovative strategies in recruiting, sustaining, and mentoring new workers and current workers with older adults. For the next part of the panel presentation, I will ask the panelists guiding questions, beginning with Sara Thompson. Aloha, Sara.
Good morning.
Could you briefly describe how work experience shaped your vision for a geriatric workforce?
My vision was actually shaped with a combination of my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who I was very close to. And although she died unexpectedly, I felt at that point as a teenager, I wanted to do something to honor her. And I never thought of working with an older adult was boring. On the contrary, she was such an inspiration to me. So that started it. And the other 2 things that shaped my vision would have had to been the mentors that I had. I don't know if some of you out there remember a Dr. Jim Kelly, who was with both the School of Social Work, and he also implemented a dual degree program at the Public School of Public Health. But he actually established these annual summer institutes in gerontology. So as an undergraduate student, I was able to take those summer classes, and that kind of perked my interest and guided me more towards a gerontological social work profession. And then I had people like Dr. Colette Brown when I got into social work, along with Dr. Jeanette Takamura, who is currently still the dean at the School of Social Work for Columbia University. And there's other people. Colin Hayashida, Dr. Hayashida still, I haven't seen him for a while, but he's been a great mentor. And the takeaway from him is you don't have to retire, Sara, just rewire and reinvent yourself. So you see, that I hope that kind of explains why I've stayed in the geriatric workforce.
That's awesome. So you had a motivation with your popo, and also some mentors who really who you saw as inputting into your life, like Colin Hayashida. I wonder how their mindset of succession planning has affected you and how you look at succession planning.
I don't know if they realized what they were really doing is they were my mentors and they were literally coaching me because I could always go back to them. I had these crazy ideas about what I thought we could do is what we should be doing in gerontology or geriatrics. And so I gleaned from them how I could take what they were showing me or teaching me and apply it to the workforce. So I had a very nice career at the VA for about 28 years. And in that experience, I started visualizing and actually looking at how we have mentorship as part of professional, but more so, it's an investment in the personal growth and development of an individual. And I see three levels of mentoring. There's the journey level. It's the postgraduate that really wants to develop their professional identity, and yet they still need to acquire a working knowledge of what the culture of that organization is as they're learning about their professional identity. At the same time, at that level, I think it's important to be able to acknowledge those initial career milestones and for us to reward them that first year, because most often we wait to recognize people after 5 years or give them a 10-year pin. I don't think that's too long. I think it needs to be nurtured. If you nurture it, you get people to be retained, and then they can move on to mid-career level. At this level, we need to look at offering incentives for professional development to keep people, in the organization. And that consists of offering to pay for continued education or conference attendance. Look at leadership training and opportunities that should be offered to not just social workers, nurses as well, but encouraging leadership opportunities at both the micro and macro level for the organization is just going to make the organization better and your workers more productive, effective, and happier. And lastly, at the senior level, these are people already that I've been able to see have the leadership qualities. They've been able to demonstrate in their clinical practice or as managers, the competencies, knowledge, the technical expertise, and most importantly, they've actually established key relationships with both their internal customers and their external customers. They may be supervisors, they could be managers of a department, but here we also need to continue to recognize the specific achievements of our supervisors and managers and engage them in what I call succession planning. And
I
so,
want,
yeah.
oh, do you want to keep going?
Yeah,
Sorry.
so what does succession planning look like in the end? So I think for me, I wanted to say that succession planning should be over, don't wait the last year to find people to take your job or to find a supervisor. It should be really over a 5-year period. But what I've been able to see and do is that with doing succession planning, it's sometimes a struggle in the government to do that, but in other areas I've been able to, I think, marketed the idea, and that is the benefits of succession planning for people out there is you have increased availability of experienced and geriatric capable healthcare professionals, and that's what we need. We also need to ensure a smooth transition within the organization for its employees and the leadership. Succession planning also fosters a culture of trust and improves employee morale, and I think it does add to reducing professional burnout. And lastly, we need to offer work alternatives for people that are thinking of pre-retirement. Had I had those options at the VA, I would have remained in the workforce. Some of those options I had proposed was being able to work part-time, which would have included part-time mentoring social workers and the other part of the time doing clinical practice.
Okay, so you mentioned that, if there was some sort of succession planning mindset for you, you might have worked longer. I wondered if you could comment on how employers react to your very comprehensive understanding and strategies of succession planning.
You don't want to think that there's people that are ageist, but in the workplace there is some ageism. I mean, I wouldn't say the VA, but I mean think about it. When I say ageism, some of the comments I would get from people are, don't worry about this, Sarah. Leave it to the next generation. Leave it to the people that are, you know, staying here to decide and to map out what kind of plans. And I guess I protested because I felt they didn't have the history, the knowledge. I knew the stakeholders. I knew who the players were. I know what to avoid and where. I mean, I knew what you could do differently to get people within the organization to buy into your ideas. You know, but oh well. I still keep wherever I work. I still keep getting on my horse about it, and I really am so appreciative that the School of Medicine is opened to a lot of things I do.
Okay, just one quick question. So, you talked about developing leadership skills and having a smooth transition. I wonder if you could give the audience an idea of the effectiveness of your strategies with your mentees.
Yeah, so I was a practicum instructor with the School of Social Work for many years, and at the VA there were at least 5 social workers. Of the 5 social work students, 3 were hired as VA social workers. Um, and they are still practicing as social workers. They've been in that organization for more than 20 years. And I'm happy to say that I get Christmas cards from the social workers about how they're doing with anything. Because again, it was, when I was a buddy to many of the social workers, I said, you can ask me anything. If you want to know about how vacation works, or your sick leave, or you want to know when is the best time to retire, or you want to know about anything about social work and what trainings are available for mentoring, just ask me anything. And then it was also, so how are you balancing work with your family life? So it's an ongoing relationship you have with people when you're mentoring. It just doesn't end when you finish work. Thank you for
Uh,
asking, Kendi.
sure. It reminds me of your relationship with Cullen Hayashida if he tells you to rewire, not retire. Okay,
Yep.
so let's continue on to expand Sarah's vision of succession planning for retention and development with Regina Rivera and Dr. Poki'i Balaz with their innovative practice in nursing. And we'll hear from Regina first. I'll ask her guiding questions. Um, Hi, Regina. Oh, you're muted.
Good
Go ahead.
morning. Thank you.
Could you describe your work experience and vision?
Yes, I've been a nurse for 33 years. The last 17 has been primarily instructing adult learners, both in the private sector and in the community college, Kapiolani Community College. And I have experience in many different settings, from clinical to acute care to long-term care, and now to instructional. I also have been working at every nursing level. I started off as a CNA, or certified nurse's aide, and then a licensed practical nurse, and then eventually my RN. So I have taken from every level. Um, I've used my experience on to forward it to the next experience. And my goal with taking all of these experience is to instill into the student learner the same thing, the value of education, starting off early. Um, I had, I often wish that they had the health academies in the schools when we were back then. A lot of the times has been wanting to have the students be more exposed to what's going to be happening in nursing, more so the long-term nursing, taking care of our kupuna, because that's where we're headed for. So my vision is to have qualified nursing candidates who are competent. Um, when I say qualified, I don't mean anything disrespectful, but trained, competently trained. They know why they're doing a nursing skill, and to have them be confident in what they're doing.
So I think you kind of answered the next question about
Mhm.
integrating theory and also experience. I wondered if there was anything else you wanted to add about how your instruction in the course is different, say, from other schools or maybe other courses that you've seen.
The training that we provide, or what I look for, is we are not the 4 week term training. We are more 7 to 8 weeks because we push theory as well as hands-on skill. Now, hands-on skill does not only include working in a lab under supervision, but having to go into a clinical setting. So either long-term care or a more specialized facility, and having the students actually see what's going on in nursing or in healthcare. Because we have different modalities, not modalities, but disciplines working on a unit. They might see another interest in radiology or respiratory therapy, but they get to see what nursing is going to be like hands in the real world, and they get to hands-on work with the residents. And I think that experience, or that hands-on experience, clinical experience, is what really differentiates us from other facilities, because we are extensive with our hands-on training. And also, we prepare the students not only for the state exam and prometric, but for a career in nursing by preparing them, by making them, having them job ready. So whenever an employer comes in to speak with them, they're confident with their skills and their knowledge, and they're ready to work. And with very minimal, training or hands-on onboarding, these students are going to be confident in their skills, as well as rationalizing why they're doing it. They understand what they're doing. So we emphasize that in training. And I think that the 7 to 8 week course actually makes a difference.
Okay, and I wondered too about you mentioned that you want them to be competent and confident and to see all the working parts in nursing in a long-term care facility or specialized setting. What do you say to students who want to maybe focus more with children and they don't want to work with older adults?
So I say to them that try it out first, because having to work with children is a whole different experience. They are a lot more fragile and a lot more medically diagnosed sick, have medical diagnosis of sicknesses that can be emotional. And so I tell the students that with your training, they are able to um, universally use it. But with children, it's minimized, or it's a lot more careful. There's a lot more thought put into working with kids. They're not as playful, they're fatigued, they're um, quite different than working with an adult. Um, when That's why we do clinicals on an adult. We get to see and we get to verbalize with the adults, than with kids. But some of them do want to work with children, but when they get to work with in clinical with the kids, they have a vision change themselves.
Okay, so could you now then describe what is the effect um, that you're sort of addressing their skill level and working with older adults? How does that affect them in terms of their workforce decisions, for example, in retention, or maybe, like you said, kind of have a switch in their mindset?
Working in long-term care is hard. We have different levels of cognitive skills with the older adult, from dementia to Alzheimer's, and the students are not prepared for that. Or working with children, they're not prepared with the amount of tubes or the amount of incapacity that they are. So when they come into long-term care, they now realize that the the residents can answer, and they can do a lot more skills. They can assist. They can um, they can actually talk to them and find out a little bit more about their past, what they did before. So you can have a conversation with them. So a lot of them end up in long-term care or working with adults because of the socialization. And also they get to use their skills more, and a lot more practicing, not practicing, but working actually on adult level where they can actually function. So it's a lot. The students gain more experience working in long-term care, and they realize that soon after they start their clinical practicum.
Okay. Thank you for sharing with us about your impact in nurse education and retention. So next we're going to hear
Thank you.
from Poki'i and her expertise in workplace innovation. Hi, Poki'i.
Hi, everybody. It's great to see so many of you and so many familiar faces and names. Hey, Terry, it's been a long time. It's nice to see you again.
All right. Could you describe your work experience and vision in the geriatric workforce?
Oh, I love that question. Well, I mean, many of us are familiar with each other, so I would try to keep it straight. Of course, excuse me. So a lot of my experience began with my lived experience into some of the points that were coming up before when culturally, culturally, our elders were always part of our lives, and we were taught from a small age how important they are, and instilled in us this sense to care for them and to always be there for them. Since I was named after my grandmother on my father's side, as was done many times before I was hana'd by her, which means I went to go live with her when I was small, so that the intergenerational knowledge could pass between my grandmother and myself. And that was really my first experience into this world of geriatrics, as everyone calls it, but for me it was just normal. It was family. When you go to parties, you see that the elders get fed first. You see everybody attending to them, not because they're incapable, but because it's a sign of respect and a sign of what they have done for us before us. And to never forget that, as Sarah brought up the workforce, that it shouldn't be out with the old and in with the new, because the elderly, I don't like that word, or the ones who've come before us have so much knowledge and so much more to teach us, that should be something that us young ones want to absorb and be part of. So after I had that experience, I did go into, of course, nursing, and always gravitated back. I would spend my lunches, or when I was on night shift, hanging out at the bedsides, talking story, learning from them, hearing about their entire life stories. And it was just fascinating to me because there was so much you could learn. I had a whole different trajectory on what I was going to do in medicine. And then my father got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and I became a caregiver, an unexpected role that nothing in medicine had prepared me for. And it changed everything. I'm a nurse practitioner. I have my DNP, and I focus on geriatrics and brain health, as well as specifically with Alzheimer's dementia and caregivers, looking at policy reform, especially in payment options and the direct care workforce and caregiving. And I never thought policy was going to become a passion of mine. So I'm a nurse practitioner, as Kendi mentioned, at Kalihi Valley. I just finished my fellowship with President Obama, the Obama Foundation Scholars Program, where I got to dive deeper into aging issues, especially at the policy level, and was a former interim executive director at Lunalita Home, leading the home, the ADC, and the trust. But most of this comes from my lived experience. So as far as my vision is something, I guess, similar to the association. I hope one day maybe that we're not having these conversations, I guess, in this sense, but that the vision would be that this is part of what we do, not that we have to come together to solve this issue, but it is part of our fabric, our thread, our community, our schools, our education. And a lot of great things were brought up, but it should be starting earlier. We're introducing our college students or nursing and physicians or social work at that level to have these experience at the long-term care. But what if we could start this earlier, like through our school systems earlier, through other programs to instill this this need or this want or this respect for the generations that are coming before us? And how do we envelop that into the youth so that we are not trying to do it at the college level and give them those experiences then? How can we make it where it is part of our society, it's part of the script, it's part of the conversations? And if we could start earlier, like we know with a lot of things, maybe it could be a difference. It could be a difference in the end. You know, geriatrics was not, right, the buzz when all of us were graduating and everybody wanted OBGYN or pediatrics. And that's great too, because we want to keep the momentum going with all the different specialties. And I found, and the reason for me saying what I was saying earlier, is when students would come, this stigma that we have, the perception that is said about elderly people or aging or our kupuna, is this notion that they are incapable and they are constantly needing our help. But when are we going to change that perception to show that they are vibrant, and that portion of what they're thinking about in a long-term care setting or those that need 24/7 help is just a small portion of society? And so when we're in school and we're in our geriatric rotations and we're learning about our IV systems or the DMEs and what we have to do at the bedside, we also need to be showing the other side of how capable and how aware and functional that most of the society is. And that when you walk into a long-term care system, because Lunalino Home had all of the students coming from all of the different schools, to show that it is not all one way, that there are many different types. And even within geriatrics, there's subspecialties. Do you want to work with Alzheimer's and dementia? Do you want to work with Parkinson? It is not a one-size-fit-all and all the same. So how do we open this up and show not just our students, but just everyone, that there is life way beyond, and that there is so much happening here, and not just focused on that when someone becomes of a certain age, they are going to need our help. And at the same time, address the needs of those that do need our help and prepare our workforce to do both. And then I'm not sure on the timing, Kendi, so just let me know. But I will just end with saying that there are a lot of innovations coming. The glide path was one. There are household models that are happening across the nation with evidence-based behind them that change the entire structure of how nursing homes look, change the entire way it looks up. Nursing stations are gone. There is no uniforms anymore. We have moved to person-centered and person-directed care, and that's a huge model that needs to be implemented. So many times when I walk into nursing homes, it's about, we're gonna feed them at this time, breakfast, lunch, dinner is at this time. But person-directed care, which we're trying to move to, and most places get to person-centered care, is about the residents and those living, because it is their home directing the care, not us telling them what they need and when to do it. Is to make it much more of a home environment, which has a lot of evidence to show the improvement of quality and retention of employees and the quality of life for residents. And as we're talking about the direct care workforce, we know that wages need to go up, but we need to speak to them. What are they wanting besides that? What do they need? And some of the things that we did at Lunalino Home at the time, just to kind of wrap this up, is exactly that. Went to talk to the CNAs and the nurse aides and our other workers about what they wanted. Instead of staff, we began saying team members. They had a lot of input in what they wanted, what they needed as we were changing policies, because the buy-in, if it was their ideas, I got more buy-in. They're willing to do it. We started a ladder program that came from them. We were one of the first to have medical assistants come to help run the office, the nursing office, and to kind of head that in administrative duties. We then, a lot of the CNAs had PCTs certificates, so we started to utilize them with their certificates. We began a ladder program from MA to NA to CNA. You could go to LPN and RN. formed a council within the nursing department. At one point, they said that we need a bath aide, just somebody to kind of directly do that. We implemented that and it worked out great. So some of what came out at Luna Luna Home, a lot of our innovations at the time, came directly from the staff or the team members. And because they knew what they needed and came to management and we worked with them to implement it, it worked out better than we could have expected. And so it was a great relationship to build and a great relationship that I hope is still continuing at this time. And I would just add in one note, began also shifting the perspective of the team to get to know the residents. And we ended up having a lot of fun with that. We did a lot of activities. They were paired up with them. They got to know them, as well as shifting the mindset that not everything had to be on a nursing schedule like we're so used to and taught, that we were now going to start shifting to the needs of the residents, the individual needs, and what they need at the times that they needed it, and what would work for them. And that really began to change things for us. So, and there.
So thank you to Poki'i and to all our panelists. And as you can tell, this is like my dream team panel. So thank you all for sharing your expertise. I think we could listen to you talk for another hour or so. But I think the commonality that I'm hearing, and I think all of us are hearing, is this emphasis on shifting mindsets or shifting behaviors, or having a shift in how we perceive what work is like and how we can build a workforce, or even thinking about building the workforce, because we've talked about this for since Audrey made that documentary. So let's quickly now go forward, because I think that with all the current innovations that you've heard from Sara, Regina, and Poki'i, this could be part of your conversation in your workplace. I mean, it's the same sort of focus on respect and listening to one another and having conversations, looking at high skills and how we can have a smooth transition with creating more opportunities for professional development. And that's true in education, which is my background. I think that we could pour the panel's expertise to recruit and develop the next generation through the middle and high schools. So I just want to briefly talk about it and touch on what you've already heard. If you went to the HPGS conference, Wanel Kaneshiro, the director of the new workforce branch in Hawaii DOE, introduced career and technical education. The main function of her branch, which just started in January, is to build relationships with industry leaders like you. So why are they creating this new branch? Because high school career technical education courses are required. They're required to have work-based learning in their curriculum. So what is work-based learning? Work-based learning could be interacting with older adults at an adult daycare center or some other meaningful negotiated work-related activity on site. So it could be in your business, it could be in your workplace, but it also could be in the classroom. So if you don't have the capacity to do on-site work-based learning, perhaps you could participate in another way in the classroom. So this could be as a guest speaker or guiding and developing problem-based learning. And because I'm applied linguist, I obviously do not have a site for them to come to. So I have gone as a guest speaker to talk about careers with older adults and how you can use your language for better care outcomes. So please consider all the ways of interacting with students to present new perceptions of working with older adults. And please contact Wanel. So there's her email. She's very encouraging. And she sent me an email saying, if there are any employers out there that want to connect with students, just email her and she and her team can make the connection. She's looking for connections across the state, throughout the state. So, if you have offices on the other islands, that'd be great. Like I said, you could be a guest speaker, you could appear on their career day. I've gone virtually on the Hawaii island as a guest speaker. So just think, if the applied linguist can do it, so can you. So Hawaii has similar workforce challenges that parallel themes across the nation and the world. We talked about low wages and little job security. And as an island state, we also face unique challenges across our islands. For example, our HPGS members on Hawaii Island have expressed the difficulties in supporting our older adult population, as they say, on a large rural island. We have recruitment challenges with students' misperceptions of working with older adults, as we've heard from our panel, and we have retention challenges with low wages, few fringe benefits, and a lack of training and pathways. So that can be changed with a champion. And there's all the other factors of job satisfaction, such as workplace relationships, supervision, work schedules, all of it relating to job retention. So it's time we get serious about adopting actionable strategies. So I pulled that, one article from 2017. I mean, so now here we are in 2023. We don't have to wonder, what should we do? I think it's clear we already have pockets of people doing things that are working. We have research going back for a long time. I mean, hey, let's get going. So we can take actionable steps today, beginning with our view of our communities. We could change perceptions in our roles as educators or in whatever work role we have by being a role model. We could engage employers to invest in people with a different mindset that includes succession planning and team-based care. Wherever you work, be a champion of any of these innovations. Please consider working with Hawaii DOE with high school and middle school students. Other care employers are already participating, and you could learn, how did they do that? What are some of the benefits? What are some of the challenges that they faced? It's not new, but it is emerging. So I would love to have further conversation. We do have our contact. Well, we're making that slide, but we could put that in the chat. So mahalo, and welcome your questions and discussion. I believe that Rick is monitoring the chat, or you can use the raise hand feature.
Rick, I did see a question in the chat. Maybe I could try to answer, and then people can join in. At the recent healthcare summit a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Josh Green, our governor, did talk about what they call the Hawaii State Loan Repayment Program. And he had shared that this is something they're rolling out. I think it's between $30 and $50 million. It's an incentive to encourage not just our physicians, but people that are PAs, nurse practitioners, to get them to stay and work in Hawaii. And they can reimburse the individual up to $50,000 per year towards the cost of their education. I know the doctors, I was talking to some Straub doctors, and they go, but Sarah, my loan is $250,000. Hey, dude, 100,000 is better than nothing. Yeah. And the other criteria was there was a certain time commitment that you have to make. I believe it was 2 years. And of course, the individuals, because it's a federally funded money, the areas, I've written this down, areas include federally qualified health centers. So these providers, we pay for your loan, you're expected to work for at least 2 years in those rural health care clinics, critical access hospitals, long-term care facilities, community outpatient facilities, and even free clinics.
Yeah, here in Hawaii, right?
Here in Hawaii. And I know most doctors we're not too excited maybe to hear this, but that will include Medicaid patients and Medicaid. Right. Hello.
Right.
Is that what you understood, Rick?
That's what I understand. And it was actually in the paper, I believe yesterday, I was reading about it. So I think it's going through. I actually am a recipient of that. I had the GI Bill, but I did have to take some loans. And I was mental health. This was in Seattle. I was one of 2 in the state of Washington that had help with my loans. And I tell you what, it made the difference of staying in the field. Most definitely. We lost a lot of people to that. And I know in mental health, the job satisfaction is like the top salary is huge here in Hawaii, but that's not the number one thing. It's really the satisfaction that you guys talked about that makes it so huge. And I really like. I did. Christy Nishida had. I guess it was 2 years ago. I went to Roosevelt and actually talked to the health class about gerontology, and they were so receptive, and the questions were so remarkable. So you're spot on. If we start approaching them at high school, middle school, talking about this, they're going to get it. They all have grandparents, right? So
I was just going to add to what you're saying, Rick. So being a grandparent, and many of us out there that are grandparents, in Hawaii, is Poki'i said so eloquently, we really don't take for granted sometimes our culture, and we shouldn't. So here in Hawaii, we have extended families, and extended families are not just limited to your nuclear family. So with my grandson who just turned 12, he lives in a household with he has like 3 or 4 sets of grandparents. And I said, how can you have that many grandparents? And so he broke it down for me. He's of Filipino ancestry. So his grandmother his great grandmother, the Lola, who just died 2 weeks ago. And I was really concerned about how he was coping. He's doing wonderfully. He's 12 years old because he's lived in this climate, like Poki'i said. So, he misses her. He's sad, but the sister's getting her bedroom and he gets his own room, so he's happy. Then, so his
priorities.
That's right. So that's his great grandmother. His grandmother is a nurse supervisor at Mercy Hospital, and she's retiring. His mother is a nurse practitioner. So I finally said to him, now, I asked him, what do you want to be when you grow up? He goes, I'm only 12 years old. I said, I'm sure. But he said, I'd like to be an astronaut, but everybody wants me to be a nurse. And so I said, why can't you be a nurse astronaut? He said, I said, anything you want to be, James, you can be. But I think it goes back to the home setting, like Poki'i and even Regina, just how we all grow up. And, I had a lot of aunties and uncles, not biological, but just they were the aunties and uncles next door or at church or wherever. And they've all influenced my character for sure, and compassion.
Right. Kathy, you have your hand up.
Okay, thank you. I was going to tell you, I have, everybody knows, those of you that know me know I have adult daycare centers. And I think if we can, as a matter of fact, I've got some high school students that are be joining me as volunteers later on in the fall. And I think if we could introduce kids to a setting like adult daycare, where it's fun and they're hands-on with the older folks, it gets them to feel like, okay, this isn't so bad. These guys aren't scary. They're fun. We have a lot of talking and all that stuff. I think if we get them introduced that way, instead of putting them right into a nursing home, which can be kind of daunting, that it would help a lot. That's just my opinion. But I think just showing the fun side and knowing that you can interact and they actually interact with you. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, I think about just normalizing it. Yeah, I mean, because it's just normal. Somebody started to say something.
So there's models like that, Kathy, that are, in fact, we were thinking of starting an intergenerational program similar to that, but there's models happening in the States where preschool and elementary school children are coming to visit, El Kupuna in different settings. And I think even in Seattle, they have the intergenerational center, is it called? And so, or they have preschools like within or attached to ADCs or other long-term care. So it's happening, and they've seen some wonderful benefits. There's also some of the household models that are sweeping across the states that we do not have here in Hawaii yet, in terms of moving away from facilities, these large facilities that we have here in the islands. They are opening the doors not just to pets and animals, but for staff to bring their children in, to bring their babies, so that it all becomes part of life. And for the residents there, they help out and they care for the staff's children when they come in, not as the baby, but just as passing on that generational knowledge and that interaction. And so there's a lot of models happening across the states that that have yet to come to Hawaii.
Well, Siegel School's out in Kapolei, I believe it is, past the interjet. They have the daycare center for kids and adults on the same campus, and they do a lot of interaction. It's really neat to watch.
Yep, here in Eva, we have the St. Francis Intergenerational. They have the preschool and the adult daycare in the same facility. And in the afternoon, you can see the two groups mixing. So it's like the children that do not have grandparents get to mix with the older adults. And it's so heartwarming when you see them. You can see them through the fence that they're having a ball. The older adult is throwing a little ball with them, and the children are getting it, running. So um, it's really progressive, and I think that they're on the right track with doing this intergenerational type of facility.
It's kind of interesting. I grew up in North Dakota, which is very similar to Hawaii in the family orientation. And my grandmother and grandfather, we'd stay at their place after school. And so we were already doing, they call this grassroots, but we were doing this when I grew up in the 70s. I'm on the workforce. Kevin was with us for a while, setting up the Abasho Cafe. We're about to roll it out. We're actually starting with the Catholic Filipino community, doing it, linking youth with seniors. So a lot of programs going on out there. Now I'm going to back up. Kathy, you also had a question about CNA's training. Did you want to ask that?
Yeah, I've had a couple of, I have a CNA school, Gene, I need to talk to you later, maybe. But I have had several nurses come and say that they're required to have a CNA certification to be in nursing school. Is that for everybody? I mean, is that required for everybody? You know?
At Kapiolani Community College, it is. In order to go into the advanced nursing, such as LPN and RN, they have to have CNA training as part of the prerequisite. The first type of training they will have is geriatric training, and the first few weeks, the 6 weeks, they will have testing, competency testing on their skills. So they would have to have CNA training as part of their prerequisite.
Don't you think all nursing students should have to have that requirement so that they can be, like you said, be oriented to working with seniors?
Yes. Yeah,
Well,
that's my opinion.
I know at Chaminade they started it too, right, Poki'i?
Yeah.
After
They
the first
need a
year
CNA.
before they did the practicum. So I was doing in-home care, and I actually was using the in-home care CNA work as a stepping stone, like you had mentioned, Poki'i, to get into the profession. And I found that folks that were actually doing CNA work got accepted faster to nursing schools than other folks. We even had some folks that were in medical school that came and did CNA work because they wanted to get the patient care. I think I think that's part of that growth, as well, just getting the skills. John, are you still here? You had a question. Oh, John was talking about family members promoting workforce stuff to your own family members and actually doing work together with him. He met somebody. I don't know if you saw that in the chat. John, do you want to ask is that a question you want to ask? No, we're getting tons of questions here.
Well, some people already responded, but yeah, I was at a facility and a woman came up to me and told me how much she likes working there and that her son now drives with her. They carpool together. Her son is also working there. I think that's wonderful. That also temporarily solves the housing issue, because nobody's going to stay in Hawaii if they can't afford housing. Right. And we can train our high school kids to do anything and everything, but if they can't afford housing, they're going to still move. So that everything seems to be revolved around that. But I'm glad to see that there are other facilities here have talked about hiring or encouraging their staff to recruit their own children to come into the workforce and provide incentives. You have to provide some kind of incentive.
Okay. Kendi, guest speakers? You're looking for guest speakers? You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so that's the work-based learning curriculum. So that would be through WNL. And I also know that Christy she's on Center on Aging, and Rick, you're part of that too. Yeah. There's a platform created by a nonprofit. It's called Climb High Hawaii. And Center on Aging has kind of you can post, I mean, anybody, any business can post kind of what can you offer them. And so, you know, what kind of expertise can you offer? And then teachers can contact you to be a guest speaker. I've talked to different classes that are like, it was a reading class over the summer and they wanted to involve the students in thinking about kupuna in the community. So I did a talk there. It wasn't necessarily a career pathway, but I thought it would be helpful to kind of support this change in the mindset. So there are a lot of opportunities to talk with students on this platform, but if you have a business like Kathy, you could contact Winnell, and you know, Arcadia Plaza assisted living facilities do have students interact with older adults in adult daycare. So that's already happening. So Kathy, you might contact them about, you know, what's the process? I know Arcadia does onboarding and make sure that the teacher comes to check up on the students. So Plaza has told me that some students kind of hide in the corner. So you just kind of have to monitor how the students are doing. But yeah, guest speakers, I mean, there's different kinds of work-based learning is the main thing is that you could have on-site and you could be a guest speaker. So yeah, we do need guest speakers.
Definitely. Rowena is asking, might we also want to consider partnerships with high school, middle schools, robotics teams? The students can use technology and robotics to come up with solutions for seniors. You know, at HPGS, so Christy had a few of us before COVID go to Iolani, and they actually had that very program. It was really fun. We actually evaluated their different things that they were inventions. Somebody had come up with a really cool way to put your pants on. It was all you know, you just roll it and it just works by a pulley and pull the pants up. It was really fun. And also different ways to open can openers and stuff like that for folks with arthritis and stuff like that. I don't know if there's other programs like that, but I think that's another way to engage, you know, our youth and working in that area, in that direction. Here, I got stuck here. Let's see here. Oh, a lot of people just making comments. Does anybody else? Yep, go ahead.
Can I just jump in? So Jeanette made an interesting comment about the sector partnership. So that's kind of a separate from work-based learning, but the sector partnerships also do influence what happens in career technical education courses. And so if you have no capacity to do work-based learning, on-site work-based learning in the classroom, you can go to meetings in the healthcare sector partnership and advocate for bringing in more curriculum that involves older adults.
Okay. And
Yeah,
Sarah's
Kendi,
asking, go ahead.
Just as a follow-up, I brought up the need to address kupuna issues, and they were saying, oh my, literally the legislators are calling us, how can we do this, what can we, so I'm not exactly sure how the process works, but it was really good to hear. And they have these two programs that we've been involved with. One is training the community health workers, and the other one is training EMTs. So high school students were already getting that training. So anyway, and I think it's, for me, I think there's lots of pieces here. So the question is how to really put forward and move up the issues that we're really interested in.
Thank you. Kevin, you have your hand up. Do you want to ask a question?
I just wanted to add something really quickly that when I went to social work school at the University of Washington, one of my most memorable classes was one that met at the long-term care facility. So we didn't meet at the university on campus. We met at the long-term care facility on Saturday mornings. And it wasn't just meeting at the facility, but they paired each of us up with a resident who we worked with for the entire term, the academic term. We got to know them, we did their oral history and developed a relationship with them. And that was, you know, it was beyond textbook learning, it was beyond classroom learning. It was a kind of affective learning where we came to really develop a love for the people that we were working for. But the one thing that they warned us all about was that you have to let the elder know that there is a beginning and an end to this relationship, because at the end of the term, you will be leaving the facility, and that, you know, you'll be continuing your education and so forth. So that's the kind of context that we went into that. And it worked out fine once they knew that, because they didn't want the residents to feel that they were abandoned after the experience was over. But it was, even today, that many years later, I look back and I still remember the resident I was paired up with, his stories that he shared with me every week. I wrote up his oral history, gave it to him at the end, and he wrote me back a letter, and he said he made copies of that and he sent it to all of his family members who they themselves didn't know his life history the way that I was able to write it down for him. So he loved it as well as I did, that experience. That's all. Thanks.
Yeah, that's great. Sarah is asking, how can we involve faith-based communities to be a part of intergenerational activities? I was just saying that with faith, so Faith Action Community Equity, which is actually, we've changed our name now just to long term. We are working with faith-based and trying to connect, because of course that's a captive community right there for our Kupuna especially. But do you guys have other ideas, presenters, on that? Other things going on around that? No. Kendi, were you saying something? You're muted.
So this is Jeanette.
Jeanette, yeah.
We actually, so with Kukuamau, we try and do lots of outreach around, we call it advanced care planning, but it's really what matters to you, what's important. And what we promote with faith communities is bring the whole family together.
Yep.
So for us, I can only say, wow, faith communities are such a great place to do this, because people want to support their grandparents. The conversations are really amazing that happen, and hopefully you're doing this long before there's a crisis. So we've seen this, and again, it's not just for the seniors, it's for the whole community, and it fits very well with every single faith tradition of how do you build a loving, caring community. And lots of people go to church, go to temple, participate in things. So that's something we've had really good experience with, and I'd, be very well happy to tell people what we've seen, but can only promote that idea.
Right. So, I'd point out, I started to get involved with Honganji, and we're actually going to start doing meetings over there for Kakua Council, separate of this. But they are actually in a position right now where, of course, just like we're all experiencing, the Kupuna are really aging out and needing a lot of help. And there's a huge gap between the Kupuna and the youth. And so this is a whole area that needs support. So just like what you're saying, Jeanette, it's just important to kind of connect with them as a whole, and to reach out to them, because that's where a lot of the population is. I think, does anybody else have any other questions? We're at 12:30 here.
There was just one quick, there was an issue that came up on Molokai when I was there. There are a lot of temples that are being abandoned, actually, because the congregations have died, or they have health issues. And this is also on Lanai. And so they're trying to think about how could they kind of retrofit a temple into becoming a care home or a foster home, so that on the outside it maintains its historic importance, but it becomes licensed as a long-term care facility, so that you're actually maybe taking care of the congregation who physically have challenges in getting to their services. But if they're living there, that's different. And then it also creates employment opportunities for the young people who were not interested in church anymore. They weren't going, but they would do this if it's a job, and it also becomes intergenerational. So it's a way of, preserving these beautiful facilities all across the state. And this is happening, even Civil Beat talked about this with Central Union Church.
Yeah,
that's a big piece of property, and their congregation is also aging rapidly, and young people are just not interested in attending the way their grandparents were.
We could also have Kathy, folks start day centers in these places, during the day kind of thing.
They'd have to work with the Department of Health to get this all licensed.
Yeah.
I was just going to add, John, it's really key. When I used to traveled to both those islands, as you know, there are no care homes. I mean, so, and a lot of people didn't want to leave their home of birth to relocate to Oahu. Who would?
Right.
To live in a care foster home. So what a beautiful way to, again, honor that community, and your family, like, and just honor your grandparents. I think that's a great idea, you know.
Yeah. I've been saying this a lot lately. The time is now. We're here. The time is now to kind of start reaching out and doing some of these programs. And all of you that are on here are doing that and are heading that direction, or have been doing this for some time. But our kapuna, and I am one. I'm 66 now, so I've arrived. And everybody else as well. This is the time to be doing a lot of these things and making them happen. It's task force time needs to move to the past, and we need to move into actually doing these things. And I think a lot of us are.
You know, Rick, I think that's it. You know, like we have a geriatric workforce. Literally, we are
we do.
aging out. I'll be 69, so I don't know how much. I don't know how much juice I'm going to have. I was telling maybe Kenny and some people, but it's more that I want to make sure I have the marbles.
Yeah.
Because if I
when the marbles are gone, we need it to be happening, right?
So I guess I go back to, we are not tapping into retirees.
No.
They just, you know, so I have friends, they retire, and now they're after a year later, they're kind of bored, but they notice that because they haven't been volunteering or keeping their mind engaged or being socially interactive. And I said, how much pickleball can you play?
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. So I'm on 10 boards and a whole bunch of workforces, and that's really what
you can't do. Yeah, we're all, I think everybody on this, not just the panel, but everybody in this meeting is probably juggling 3 or 4 things.
Yeah.
I just don't know where to go. I mean, I don't know where to find. I wish there was like some place where it's not AARP, but just to find these nurses, retired nurses, social workers, doctors, whatever, that still could help mentor other people. I don't know. Anybody else out there have ideas of where to get these find them? I don't know. Maybe we have to have like a coffee house, and they get free coffee.
There you go. Yeah, the Abasho Cafe.
Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a great conversation, and Kendi suggested we have more meetings like this, which I agree. And maybe we can address this again at another one of our general membership meetings in the future. And I know that Christy Nishida and that workforce group we have similar discussions in there as well. So I want to thank everybody for being here. And I will just remind everybody that on November the 2nd, we're honoring Gary Simon, who is the president of the Hawaii AARP branch. And if you go to our website, hpgs.org, there's more information about that. And we'd love for you to join us on that. It's virtual, by the way. Zoom. It's a Zoom as well. So thank you so much for coming. Have a great day and a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Aloha.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.